Hello. Welcome to Open Source episode 40. I'm delighted to be joined by, just Rory. Hi, Rory. And the disappearing act of Mark Simpson. Hi, Mark. So for today's episode, we're going to talk about, and the clue is in Mark's background, is gaining traction. So, Mark, because you do have the fancy car going up a hill, I'm going to let you to kick it off and share your thoughts on what gaining traction means to you.
So I think it means a lot of things at different stages, I think, Waleed, and beyond, when you're out trying to create all this growth, traction and growth hacking, I guess, first of all, for me, it's traction with an idea or even before that, traction with a problem or an opportunity. So what is it? And we often, rather than jumping to build a solution, is actually testing that. So is our thesis, is our assumption right or wrong? And often you want to test that with a number of people. And why? Because you're looking to build some momentum and feedback around that. Because sometimes I know for myself, I've just got it wrong. I've just misinterpreted it, misunderstood it. And seeing, is it enough of a problem or an opportunity to warrant investing more time in it? So initially it can be as simple as testing the theory. And then when you start to think about solving it, is it desirable to solve it at that point? And then what I find from traction is settling with myself. There's the three great questions from Elvin Turner around why this, why now, why us? And I think they're important pieces to decide, if I use the hill analogy, do I actually want to try and climb it? First of all, does that make sense? And then I might be going off and thinking about solving it. But at that point, I'm trying to define that goal, that clearly defined goal and purpose. And that's almost, for me, about making sure I've got the right foundations in place to make sure I'm climbing the right hill.
Yeah.
That's my starter.
Yeah, it's a great, series of points to kick this thing off because, as a startup founder, I mean, when I look at, traction, gaining traction, it's really two things. I think it's the lifeblood first of any startup, because if you're not gaining traction, you're not going to be able to get the next round of investment. You're not going to be able to recruit that key staff member you've always wanted to recruit because they didn't quite believe it enough. There was not enough data to back it up. And as you said, you, as a startup founder or co-founders, you have an idea, and getting the traction is validation of that idea. People are supporting it, they're liking it. Ideally, they're spending money on it, and that's what gaining traction is. And the second element, I would say, traction is also your compass, because you figure out really well, very rapidly, what works or what doesn't work. Any startup will usually what they do is that you do like a whole series of testing, whether it's A/B testing, multivariation testing, and the data that comes in, the one that wins is the one that gets the more traction, and it will guide you one way or the other. So it's letting the data, help you make an informed decision. So I think, from a startup perspective, gaining traction it's lifeblood. It's what gets you the customers. It's what gets you the new staff. It's what gets you the funding, and it's also your compass in terms of where and how you should focus your efforts on. At least that's my take on it. I don't know what you guys think. In addition,
no, I would agree, and I think particularly because when you often start, you're in a deficit, so it's your money, your runway that you're burning, and you want to get to that next stage. And it is when you've got that clear purpose. And then can you help others to join? And it might not just be staff, it could be partners and different types of partners. It might be partners to help with the innovation. It might be some innovation cluster. It might be around somebody that is part of the solution set. It might be around somebody that can help distribute it. It's a number of those things. So if you can get that kind of first nucleus of momentum from people, and almost what I call some gravitational stakeholders in that, the ones that draw others.
yes.
I mean, it's the sort of thing that you've executed really well with Rebalance Earth in terms of, you know, the initial people that you got involved helped as a pull for others.
Completely.
And it's really important.
Completely. I mean, Ralph Chami, from the IMF, brought a lot of gravitas, from the financial and institutional kind of audience. Ian Redman from the conservationists brought a lot of gravitas from that part of the world. But there is, another element regarding gaining traction, which is in terms of how do you share it and when do you share it? Because I don't know if you guys noticed, but previous speaker we had on the show, Rahul Mathur, he's the founder and CEO of Bima Pay, this innovative new insurance company in India. Now, if I remember the post, they were signed up to join Y Combinator, which is quite prestigious, in November, but it's only in March that they announced it. And so the point I'm trying to say here is that when you do hit some great milestones within your traction, there is an element of when do you release it. Because, for example, if you gain it to this huge milestone, if you release it too soon, you could get a huge amount of new customers or new partners whatsoever, but your platform may not be able to scale to that point. So you need to be able to balance sharing that news with what are your existing capabilities. Can they cope with that? And there are many different angles. For him, I think it was also a strategic move to reinforce, gaining an extra partnership or something along those lines. I don't remember it exactly, but it is about when do you wisely and strategically use the announcement of the milestone you've gained.
Yeah,
I think that's right. I think the speed control aspect is essential, isn't it? I do a lot of living in Switzerland. I do a lot of skiing, obviously, and if you ski, sometimes you find yourself with your car up in the mountains somewhere and slightly blocked, and or alternatively trying to get up a hill and it's very snowy. And in that context, for me, you can feel the gravity, right? It's sort of pushing you. You're still at the point where you can feel the gravity. And so you've got to take this seriously. So you're in a situation of awareness. And then you mustn't, as you say, Walid, accelerate too much, because then you get your wheels spinning and then you get stuck. And so I think it's around a little bit remaining focused and in the business context, looking at those very small data points, which are just still feelings. You're still feeling that you're moving forward, you're slowly moving forward, but take those data points of success and failure or whatever and try and package them into the next thing that will get you moving quicker. So yeah, I think that you're still in the situation of gaining traction means you're still in the situation of we could live, we could die, right? We could begin to go backwards. We haven't quite got the confidence of moving forward. So really that thing of, okay, now let's build these tiny things that we've been given into something bigger,
Yeah. I think they're both two great examples, and it is traction under control. And there are times when you do kind of let the brakes off. And I agree, with Rahul's venture, they didn't go too loud too early, because he's already seen this week with the funding that so many other people have signed up. They're scaling up the AWS solution as fast as they can. But again, during the process, and again, great example from Rahul before I get to what I think are great examples from Rory as well, that there was lots of regular interaction. So I think these points about being interested in interesting. So it was always great to read each week from Rahul about the team were doing and how it was going. So there was, by association, interest in him and then interest in the brand. And he was putting lots of stats out about this is what we're learning, this is what we're testing, this is what we're growing. And I think, Rory, with Simplifier, you've done that really well too. So there was lots of testing points. You were building a quality product by testing with the right consumers, and you were thinking about the right partners in terms of, we meet the IA CCM standards and deal with that. And you weren't rushing off to suddenly say, here's the solution for all of it. But there were lots of regular opportunities to get involved and participate in that. So it was, sustained interest in both of those examples in terms of what you're doing. And the same with Rebalance.
Yeah.
I would disagree with you. I mean, respectfully, and whilst very much appreciating what you're saying, I think Simplify is the perfect example of how you don't get traction, because we haven't we haven't actually built up any momentum. We've got dissipated, and so I think that's something really to be careful of. You know, sharing very openly. I think you've got to keep moving forward. You've got to keep exploiting it. And I think we haven't done that successfully. It's about every minute you can, you press a little bit more on the accelerator, and that means being available, being constantly doing what you're describing Rahul is doing, rather than what I've been doing.
Well, that's great. Great humility and great noticing. It's funny, isn't it? What you perceive on the outside to what you experience on the inside.
There is another element of gaining traction that is understood but is not recognized enough, I think, is the pressure that startups are under to be able to demonstrate gaining traction. It gets to a point where I'm sure, I know I have, and I know a lot of other startups have too, is where you kind of push the boundaries between what's real and what's fictional, which is, you know, like, well, we're you know, you could be having a conversation with this big company, you know, that could, you know, provide you loads of new customers or whatever. And you could, and it's all about the wording, you know, so you will notice that startups are very good at gaining the impression of traction, even though what has actually been signed or not signed is just a conversation, or is just a memorandum of understanding, which we all know is not a contract. You know, it's not a contract that will lead to finance. But because there's such pressure to demonstrate traction, that sometimes you feel like, I'm so close from gaining it, I'm just going to mention it, because mentioning it will help me get this other contract on the side. And that is a very difficult ground to be able to walk on, because it is like quicksand.
Yeah, I agree. But I think generally you notice it when it happens. So, you know, the firms that announce that they've opened an envelope that morning,
Yes,
rather than anything else. And then there are the people at the other end that keep quiet until they've got their first $25 million contract.
But it's like you remember during the, you know, especially in 2018, a bit less now, it still happens, but less. In 2018, you had everyone around the globe saying, I've got this blockchain POC, or I've got this blockchain thing, that and this. And then you scratch the surface. It's like, where is it? And you realize that's all it is. It's a press announcement with no substance behind.
Yep. No, I agree. So again, we're back to some of those other things. It's being really purposeful. It's persevering. It's being really authentic about what you are, and it's managing your brand as much as managing your progress.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, listen, you, the listener, the audience who is listening to this show, what has been your experience, you know, regarding gaining traction? What are some of the toolkits you've used to be able to use to gain traction to the point where you're at? What are some of the tough choices you had to make? Did you have to take a few steps back before announcing it? Or did you have maybe to blur the lines between what is the truth and what is fiction? We'd love to hear your stories. And if you'd like to come and join us and talk to us about any other subject, please don't hesitate. We'd love to have you on the show. But for now, we're going to wish you all a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Cheers.